Hey, you want some cool merch? Then head down to my Teespring store where all these designs are made by me, ranging from mugs, hoodies and t-shirts, and even from catchy slogans that I have made myself. Oh yeah, some tasty stuff. Get it all today.
I was on my way to my uncle's castle for the next few days. My uncle is a baron in the Midlands with a huge, massive estate. Obviously me and my parents are quite wealthy too, and usually take a yearly trip to our uncle's as he's quite reclusive. But being a well-known baron has a very large say in the government, as he's well off, if I must say myself. I'm only 12 but set up to replace him in the future if he dies, as he has no kids of his own. So I'm obviously looking forward to checking out my future home and see what shrivel work there. We still have a long way to go before we get there, so my mother suggested,
Darling, we are coming up to a pit rest stop, or whatever the peasants call it. Do you want to get something? Obviously it won't be good as the food we have at home, but it will do.
I agreed that it will do and had to talk with the common muck if needed. If I needed something to eat, obviously. We came to the restaurant and saw they had a Subway, so I decided to get that. I entered the place and saw what vermin was eating there. This man was chewing this sandwich disgustingly, with meat going up, around and down, teeth up and down, swilling in his mouth and all around along with bread.
Wait, were you looking at your treats?
The man said to me. I replied with nothing, I'll leave you to your mundane life. I walked up to the counter and ordered an Italian BLT as I sounded and looked exquisite. The servers looked at me in displeasure. I usually had a Tory badge on, and obviously Labour folks are still mad about losing in 2019. Were utter whelps. I mean, we didn't handle the pandemic well, but it did better at other countries, so suck it up. I took my sub and my drink back to my parents and we took off from that dreadful place. We were not long from my uncle's estate as I could see the castle over the horizon. The sound is not bad for where I got it from, despite the state of that place. I may visit there on the way back if those cretins aren't working there. We drove up to the ground of the estate. There are statues and everything there. It was pretty beautiful. Maybe when I get the place I could build one of me right in the middle there. We got to the front of this magnificent castle. It was truly astounding that my uncle lived here and had a gothic look to it too. I'm fond of the style, but I don't mind it with castles, as they do have thousands of years of history to them. The front doors opened and my uncle's butler invited us to come on in. The butler greeted us on the way in.
Welcome to Redgrave Estate. The 4th Baron Redgrave will be with you shortly. Wait here, please.
We looked at the paintings of the previous owners of years past. A Georgian gentleman with funny over-the-top hairdo. A eccentric Victorian aristocrat with a fancy cane. And a mighty king from the Dark Ages standing in his glory. It had a jester, which is odd, but odd sight to see, which had the head of a jester in the background. I got closer to look. It looked like the eyes were looking at me, and only me. All of a sudden, my uncle greeted me out of nowhere.
Ha 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 ha! Welcome to my home, my boy. Ah, my darling sister, glad you could come.
My uncle was really happy to see us, but he did really come out of nowhere. I looked at the painting again, and to my surprise, the jester head wasn't there anymore. Just the king. Intriguing. I moved on thinking nothing. Thinking nothing of it, thinking I was tired from the travelling for so long. He brought us to the study to rest and ordered the waiter to bring some refreshments. The waiter had a look of fear in his eyes, which brought joy to mine, considering I'll be running this place in the future. My uncle started to speak.
So how was the trip getting down here? I hope it wasn't too bad.
My mother replied, saying it was fine, but obviously we had to stop at that ghastly pit stop. My uncle bellowed with outrageous laughter.
Ha 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 ha! I'm glad it does stay in touch with this vermin for a bit of COVID on them. Don't want to get that now, do we? Ha 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 ha!
His laughter then stopped and returned to his serious but stern look.
So, obviously we know why we are here today. It's to teach Jonathan the way of being a top baron of this county. And be a good lord.
I knew the reason we were here. I'm obviously being groomed to replace him as the Baron and the 5th Baron Redgrave, as he has no heir for himself. So I was chosen. My mother and father, who I mentioned, the executive at Goldman Sachs, nodded. My uncle took me and decided it was time to tour the castle. My uncle took me into the lobby and showed me all around.
So, Jonathan, so these are the people who once ruled here and had this land by the balls.
I looked at the paintings I saw before, and the one with the king has still no jester head. I wonder what was going on there. A maid popped out doing their usual work and she looked terrified. You know, my uncle was looking at the paintings. I quickly went to approach her, but she quickly walked away. An odd encounter with the staff, indeed. I had to make sure she gets fired as she's still working here by the time I'm in charge. My uncle then took me to the dining room. It was a huge, magnificent hall with this huge, long table. I think to myself, does William always eat here alone by himself? But again, I'm reminded he's reclusive and rarely in the public eye, so I got back to basking in how long this table is. My uncle said we should visit the kitchen. I agreed, then followed, but quickly turned around as I thought someone was sitting in the chair behind me. No one was there, but I swore I felt a presence. I shrugged it off and followed my uncle into the kitchen. There was quite a few of the staff in the kitchen preparing for dinner and also washing up too. They also had a look of fear on them, but probably because they need to cook quick for me and my uncle. I better hope it's good. I hope better it's good or they're fired too. We left the kitchen, but not before I heard weird cluttering noises behind me. Some of the plates have moved and none of the staff were working near them. Again, I didn't care and went with my uncle upstairs to the hallways and bedrooms.
So, boy, what do you think of the government's latest bill that banned trans rights?
I thought it was amazing. I believe trans is a mental illness itself and should be treated as a good thing.
Ha ha ha, excellent! I love it the government to get that person and glad it was put into action. Come, we've got some fancy rooms to show.
We entered the east wing corridor. It had a way more gothic feel as the corridor was dripped in red, with even more faces of the past hanging on the wall. As we were walking down, I swear the paintings were staring right at me, especially on one where I saw the eyes were literally following my movements. My uncle invited me into his bedroom, the main chamber of the whole castle. His trophies and achievements were even here, and there were so many. Even though more than me, I'm only 12, so I still need to achieve more, obviously. But I've never seen this amount before.
Ha 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 ha! Are you looking in astonishment, my boy? Yes, I have accomplished much, but always need more.
We left the room, but not before I had this strange giggle. I don't know where it came from, but we were the only ones here. Where could I have that come from? Dinner was ready and me and my uncle sat down in the dining hall together for supper. We were having steamed lobster with sulphur, which I hoped the cooks prepared well, as I can smell it from here. And they brought it out and it looked delicious. The servers also looked scared, but I'm going to ask my uncle about that after I tuck into this tasty meal. The time had come to ask him after we had finished our lobster. I asked my uncle while the staff are scared and the strange things I have been seeing.
Ha ha ha! I won't hide you from any longer. These halls are full of dark tales from years and centuries past. Former inhabitants are still here, but there's one tale that's darkest of them all.
I was shocked to find out that my uncle's and my future's house is full of ghosts who aren't paying the rent. But more interested in this dark tale my uncle was on about.
Come here, boy, and learn closer. This is the tale of the bloody Jester.
The hall was beaming with noise and cheer. The king was celebrating his wedding day with his 19-year-old wife, Princess Isabel of Spain.
Ha ha ha! This is a momentous day as we are now allies of the great nation of Spain. Toast to me and our honour.
The hall roared with the cheers of the king and his wife.
Now it's time to celebrate. My friend has created a special patronic routine for this day. Jester, in you come.
The Jester is a loyal friend and a subject of the king. He also fought many battles with him and is not that bad of a fighter. He started his routine with juggling and all kinds of tricks, fart jokes, impersonations, everything. The hall roared with laughter. Even the king and the princess were laughing uncontrollably. The Jester was proud of his routine and its reaction and tucked into some tasty wild boar on the king's table.
Ha ha ha, Jester! You're amazing at what you do, but you're more amazing at being a trusted friend and loyal ally.
The Jester smiled with gleam in his eye. The Jester hugged the king and went back to eating his ball. Which was odd to him. The princess was flirting with one of the king's loyal knights, Sir Hugh Anos, but thought nothing of it as the princess is still a teen and the king has been with her since she was 16. The party started to get more rowdy as the drinks were brought out and everyone was chugging beer after beer after beer. The Jester wasn't much of a drinker and had to make sure he was sober enough if he had to perform again. But as everyone was getting tipsy, he decided to retire to his quarters, and the king, who had only had a beer or two, agreed that he can.
Go into your room. You've done well today to please my subjects. Maybe you can go work on more routines that will make them die of laughter next time.
The Jester laughed with the king and agreed, and went to his quarters. Later that night, the Jester was working on jokes and other gags. The party was still going, but kind of died down a bit as some have fell asleep from the alcohol, and obviously the king shortly retired after him. At least it wasn't rowdy anymore as it was earlier. The Jester thought of this puppet gag that could blow audience gowns off. He created a puppet of himself and made a hole where his hand would go and made the puppet speak with his voice. He couldn't think of a name for this action, so it kinda needs more work. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw two shadows walk past his door. He peeked out to see two people running down the stone halls. He quickly followed as he was curious to see what was going on. He followed them slowly and quietly through numerous halls before they entered a room. The Jester got up to the door to peep in. He is giggling and moaning, and what he saw shocked him. It was the princess and Sir Hugh Anos fornicating in the room. The Jester was so shocked that he ran away back to his room, but not before they saw him too. The Jester was pounding up and down his room, wondering what to do and if he should tell the king or not, and guards came into his room. The Jester was astounded and told them to follow him quickly to the king, while they had a confused face and look. The Jester made it to the throne room. The Jester said he had to tell the king something urgently. The king said,
I know. Why did you do this to me?
The Jester was confused, but at that moment the guards pushed him to the floor, and the king had a disappointed but sad look on his face. At that moment the Jester knew. He screamed and pleaded that he didn't fornicate with the princess, but the king didn't take no notice.
Take him away in chains and torture him for weeks, no, months before he's executed.
The Jester was dragged away with chains rattling behind him to endure months of torture. They put pins in his eyes that bled down to his face. He cried. He had the most heaviest amount of pressure on his chest and lungs that made him bleed through his mouth. He cried more. He had slashed cuts all over his body to bloodlet him, but soon his cries turned to creepy, long-winded giggles that echoed throughout the castle. When the king himself heard him as he cringed as his former best friend was being tortured to death, as did the knight Sir Hugh Anos. So, racked with guilt, hearing this, leapt off the castle walls to his death. Isabella with his child gave birth to his child. A few months later, as the king's heir, but soon died herself due to loneliness. The king later passed away to old age. With all this tragedy in these halls, there's once that sound of chains being rattled across the ground, with the sound of evil laughter still in his outfit covered in blood, and pins in his eyes is the presence of the bloody jester. A few hours had passed in the dining room as my uncle finished telling me that old wives' tale. Then again I heard giggling before and I saw a jester's head in that painting. But then my uncle said,
But this is just a story. Well, but I say it is anyway. I think it's time for bed, isn't it?
I looked at the time and it was 10 PM, so yes, it's way past my bedtime. My uncle then said strangely,
But stay away from the dungeon. At night, though. No one wants to be alone there at night. That's my only warning.
I took that a bit odd to why I would go down there, but I said to him I wouldn't. I went to bed as did my uncle and my parents. I tossed and turned as the story did spook me for just being a useless tale. I awoke bits and checked in with my friends from Eton. They were impressed that I'm going to become a future baron with a huge castle. We laughed about the pause and said night to them. I still couldn't get to sleep and I was tossing and turning, like it wouldn't want me to sleep. And I heard something call my name. Jonathan. I got out of bed and went into the hall. I still heard my name being called, but the hall started to bleed and emit a loud buzzing noise. I put the hand over my ears and ran around into the next hall before it all stopped. So did the buzzing noise. My vision started to blur a bit and I turned around to see this beautiful woman come up to me. In this old, Middle Ages attire, but I was too engrossed with her looks as she only looked young. Also had this curvy figure, not gonna lie. She came up to me and said,
Oh, why are you so alone, Nino? Follow me, I've got something to show you.
I was so entranced in her looks that I agreed and went downstairs and down another level. She turned the corner and then she just vanished, like she wasn't there at all. I continued down the hall and went down some more steps. The door I came to said wine cellar. I heard a loud rowdy noise behind it, so I entered. There was nothing, just pitch black. But it was still very hazy and day, so I continued onwards. I realised where I was. It was no wine cellar or anything like it. It was the dungeons itself. I thought to myself that I could send ex-staff down there if they ever disobey me. Just saying, maybe a good idea. Then all of a sudden I heard loud cries and screams from all around me. Everything started to go in red and then just stopped. Then I heard rattling of chains behind me and that creepy laughter. I didn't want to turn around, but I had to, so I did. In the shadows I saw something creep closer and to my horror, it was him. Blood all over, pins in his eyes, and blood pouring out of his mouth, and that creepy laughter that can shock your soul. It was him, the bloody jester, coming towards me. I quickly ran out and through the door and back up the stairs, his laughter getting quieter and then vanished. I got back into the main hall and it looks like I escaped, but I was in deeper trouble, as my uncle was there staring in disappointment.
I told you not to go down there, boy, my uncle replied.
I said to him I was led down there by this beautiful young girl. Also, everything was hazy and daisy. I didn't know what I was doing, like I was in a trance. My uncle said,
There is a lot I haven't told you yet. Come into my study.
We continued into the study and my uncle told me to sit down.
There was no ordinary girl, boy. That was the Princess Isabella, thinking you were her long-lost lover, Hugh Anos.
I wonder why I was engrossed by her looks. That was See, it was the long dead princess of Spain that my uncle told in his story, but why did he think I was a lost love? I told my uncle.
This is going to be a shock to you, but remember that child of Isabella and Huanos that became the next heir? Well, we are descendants of that boy. This castle has been passed down to us through a long line that started with Isabella and Hugh. You are the latest.
Oh great, I just found out I have Spanish blood. How am I going to explain this to the lads when they get back? That's like being an immigrant. So I asked about the Jester.
The Jester is a spirit full of hatred and betrayal. Because of what happened to him, he's a dark spirit full of vengeance. But he appeared to you as he realised a descendant was on his own. Which is why I said don't go into the dungeons, as that's where his spirit and presence is the strongest. So never go down there again.
This may be the most terrifying night of my life. Not only being led on by an adulterer, but being almost killed by the evil spirit of a Jester.
I would suggest going back to bed, boy. Perhaps a room next to mine where you can be safe.
I went back to bed and so did my uncle and never heard voices again. Weird stuff did happen, like tappings on the wall and the usual stuff, but took no notice. The weekend rolled by, it was time to leave and say goodbye to my uncle. As I was driving away, I saw a woman in the window waving to me. It was Isabella, obviously waving goodbye to her 10 times great nephew. I have to own that castle in the future, but I'll never forget that sound of rattling of chains and that creepy laughter.
So I hope you enjoyed that little horror story. It's the third one, by the way, and also I think the longest now. Time I keep writing these, and keep coming longer and longer and longer, don't they? The next one will probably be long too. No, so yeah. I think the last one was in October or something like that. I'll have to check. I'll probably have to put it on, but I probably won't. But yeah, it was last year, way before this. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the bloody Jester. It was a ghost story this time. This time the Metallicus wasn't a nice guy to begin with like the last two. It was a Tory tough, and when you hear the stuff happen to him, he still is a bit of a douche, isn't he? But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this, and remember, stay spooky. See you next time.